Welcome to the 5-Minute Disasters podcast from 5minutedisasters.com, where each week we uncover worldwide disasters in about 5 minutes. If you enjoy the show and would like to support us, why not consider buying us a coffee? Head on over to 5minutedisasters.com/coffee to see how. This is episode 11, the Halifax Explosion. The Halifax Explosion of the 6th of December 1917 stands as one of the most devastating disasters in Canadian history and one of the largest non-nuclear explosions ever recorded. Occurring during the height of World War I, the explosion resulted from the collision of two ships in the bustling harbour of Halifax, Nova Scotia. The catastrophic event not only obliterated much of the city, but also claimed nearly 2,000 lives, injured thousands more, and left an indelible mark on the history of maritime disasters. On the morning of the 6th of December 1917, the bustling port of Halifax was alive with the activity typical of a major wartime harbour. As a key transatlantic convoy assembly point, Halifax was instrumental in the war effort, with ships coming and going daily. Among those entering the harbour that morning was the French cargo ship Mont Blanc, a vessel carrying a deadly cargo of explosives. The ship was laden with around 2,925 tons of explosives, including highly volatile materials such as TNT, picric acid, and benzol, destined for the European front. At the same time, the Norwegian ship Imo, which was bound for Belgium to collect relief supplies, was leaving the harbour. Due to a series of miscommunications and navigational errors, the two ships found themselves on a collision course. Despite efforts to avoid disaster, the Imo struck the Mont Blanc near its bow, causing sparks that ignited the benzol that had been stored in now overturned barrels on the deck of the French ship. The collision itself was not catastrophic, but the subsequent fire aboard the Mont Blanc quickly turned into an uncontrollable blaze. As thick black smoke billowed into the sky, onlookers gathered along the shoreline, unaware of the extreme danger. Just before 9:05 a.m., the fire reached the explosive cargo, triggering an enormous explosion. The blast was so powerful that it sent a massive shockwave across Halifax, flattening buildings, shattering windows up to 50 miles away, and causing a tsunami in the harbour. The force of the explosion was immense, equivalent to about 2.9 kilotons of TNT. The Mont Blanc was vaporized, and debris rained down across the city, with some parts of the ship found miles away. The explosion generated a towering fireball and a pressure wave that tore through the city's north end, leveling entire neighborhoods. The blast also triggered fires throughout Halifax as gas lamps and wood stoves were overturned, further compounding the devastation. In the immediate aftermath, the scene in Halifax was one of utter destruction and chaos. Nearly 2,000 people were killed instantly, with another 9,000 injured, many of them severely. Thousands were left homeless as entire districts were reduced to rubble. The explosion caused widespread destruction, with approximately 1,600 homes completely obliterated, and thousands more were damaged beyond repair. The harbour itself had so much water displaced that it was momentarily possible to see its floor. But this was soon replaced by so much water trying to fill the void that a tsunami up to 60 meters high swept through the harbour, carrying the Imo with it, depositing it onto the shore at Dartmouth. The human toll was staggering. The explosion not only took the lives of residents, but also claimed many of the men, women and children who had rushed to the waterfront to watch the burning ship, unaware that they were standing in the path of disaster. Rescue and recovery efforts were hampered by the sheer scale of the devastation, compounded by a blizzard that swept through Halifax the day after the explosion. Many of those injured or trapped beneath the rubble faced additional suffering as the cold weather set in. Despite the overwhelming destruction, the response to the disaster was swift. Medical personnel, rescue workers, and military forces were mobilized from across Canada and the United States. Boston, in particular, played a significant role in the relief effort, sending doctors, nurses, and supplies to aid the stricken city. This act of solidarity forged a lasting bond between Halifax and Boston, commemorated annually by the gift of a Christmas tree from Nova Scotia to Boston. In the weeks and months that followed, the massive task of rebuilding Halifax began. The city had lost a large portion of its population, and many survivors were left with horrific injuries, including blindness caused by flying glass from the explosion. Entire communities had been wiped out, and the rebuilding process was slow and arduous. However, the resilience of the people of Halifax shone through, and the city eventually recovered, though the scars of the explosion would remain for generations. The Halifax Explosion also had significant legal and political consequences. An inquiry was held to determine responsibility for the disaster, and the captain of the Mont Blanc and the harbour pilot were initially blamed for the accident. However, subsequent legal battles revealed that the collision had been the result of a series of unfortunate mistakes rather than any one individual's negligence. Today, the Halifax Explosion is remembered as one of the most tragic events in Canadian history, and its impact is still felt in the city more than a century later. Memorials and museums have been established to honour the victims and educate future generations about the disaster. The explosion also led to changes in safety regulations for the transportation of hazardous materials, as the event highlighted the catastrophic potential of such cargo in a busy urban setting. The Halifax Explosion was a disaster of immense proportions, leaving a trail of destruction and heartbreak in its wake. Its scale and suddenness shocked not only Canada, but the entire world, serving as a grim reminder of the dangers that can accompany industrial and wartime activities. Yet amid the tragedy, the resilience of the people of Halifax and the outpouring of international support stand as enduring symbols of humanity's ability to unite and rebuild in the face of catastrophe. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the 5-Minute Disasters podcast from 5minutedisasters.com. If you did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And while you're there, why not leave us a review? Also, please consider listening to our other 5-minute podcasts, which you can find at 5minuteproductions.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.